All right, Mr. Spore here, marine biology. Also, THS booster and a baker. Okay, this week we are going to be doing the mollusks. So we're starting in on species list number 5, and we'll jump in and start on the phylum notes, which if you have your weekly species blank sheet, work on the phylum notes is on the back. You put the phylum name and then some characteristics of it, and we'll get into the species that belong to that phylum here. Okay, so let's jump into the mollusks. Mollusca. Okay, I've broken the mollusks into 2 lists because there are so many of them here, and we're about to find out why. So mollusca is again a phylum, which is a group of animals right below the animal kingdom. Other phylums we've looked at so far would be the cnidarians and the echinoderms in detail for this class. And so now we're getting into the mollusks. And again, the largest group of marine organisms, 23% of all named marine critters belong to this. It is a huge, huge group. There's 85,000 species that currently exist. And there's even more in the fossil record. Of course, mollusks make great fossils because they have hard parts, shells and things like that, so we have a good record of these in the fossil record. Squishy things don't make such good fossils. I once had a geology teacher say, when was the last time you found a fossilized tongue or a fossilized eyeball? I think the answer would be no. Okay, there's a lot of variety in this group, and when we look at mollusca, there are a bunch of different subgroups within this, or subclasses. There's the gastropods, which are like snails and slugs, which we'll be looking at today. There's the cephalopods. Cephal means head, and pod means foot. And so with these guys, it literally means a head with feet attached to it. If you think of an octopus or a squid, it's kind of that deal, right? They're a face with just feet coming out, tentacles. There's not a body there really in between. There's bivalvia, which we'll be looking at next week, the bivalves, so the 2-shelled variety of mollusks, which is a huge variety. And then there's also the chitons. Chitons have 8 little plates down their back and 1 big foot underneath, similar to what the gastropod has, which is like a giant foot. That's what gastropod means. Okay, basically a stomach foot because it sits in their bottom. Here in this diagram, you got a hypothetical ancestor. So really this, looking back in the fossil record and stuff, we can see that this thing here has all of the basic features that every single one of these very distinct groups have in common as well. And you might think, well, a snail and a squid, or a clam and a squid especially, seem pretty far off. But when you look at their features, you'll see that they share a lot in common. Some of those features are they have a nervous system, they have a nerve cord, some even have a brain, so this would be our first organism that has a centralized nervous system where they can process information coming in from the nerves. Interestingly enough, that centralized nervous system for them isn't located, completely anteriorly at the very end of a spinal column, like with us, encased in our cases, in a skull. Theirs connects and processes information around their esophagus. So you can see this little radial nerve ring that runs around the esophagus. So they're literally thinking with their throat, not with their head. Kind of cool. Okay, they have a radula, which is a tongue, but this tongue has little tiny teeth all over it. A tongue with teeth. What do you think of that, Tatum? Apparently he thinks a lot of that. So they have this tongue with this chitinous teeth, and chitin is a specific type of molecule. It's actually a carbohydrate that contains nitrogen, and it's found in fungus, actually, in their cell wall. Interesting connection between the animal kingdom and the fungal kingdom there. But it has these little teeth where they can basically lick, plants and eat them that way by just shaving them. Cool. They have a pair of gills or a single gill where they do respiration. And if you look here, they have some other things. They have a heart. Although it's not shaped like our heart, they have a heart, right? So that's connected to their gills. And then they also have a through digestive system, so they have a mouth, right, where they take in food, and that would be on this side, and this one here with the little chitinous tongue. It travels down, basically, almost like an esophagus. It is an esophagus, I guess, to a stomach, and then to, primitive, intestinal tract, and then all the way out. So they have a through digestive system. They have a reproductive system over here. And many of them have this mucousy layer, this mantle, which then they'll grow their shell from as well. And again, huge variety in the mollusca world. You can see all the different kind of groups represented here, from the bivalves to the chitins to the gastropods to the cephalopods here. This poster kind of has them broken up. Cephalopods here. Looks like gastropods. Huge variety. Huge variety. In fact, while I'm at it, let's just look under my table where I'm sitting, shall we? Let's go on a little journey here. Shells. So here's an example of a cool gastropod snail shell. Pretty large size one. These things live many years to grow these things. Bivalve shell right underneath here. Chomp, chomp, chomp. This is a mussel. Right? Here's another one. This is a Nuttall's cockle, local clam, and some tropical shell that I got. All right. Anyway, a huge variety of them, and I have a bunch. Ooh, let's look at this moon snail. I really love this black snail that I got here. This I got in Louisiana on the Gulf Coast, the Gulf of Mexico. I'm gonna skip that one for now. And then I got this giant moon snail here. It's just really pretty and smooth. Anyway, these things make great fossils, and we have a good record of their evolution and history. Many of these as well serve as indicators in the fossil record, like, oh, this one lived during this time, and when we find them, we can use that to age date rocks. That's kind of cool. First one we're going to talk about today is a little gastropod. It is a little snail, and this is one of our real common ones that we find in tide pools. Oftentimes, you'll find them clustered on the shady side of a rock, so on the north side of a rock that gets shade when the tide goes out. When the tide is in, they're out crawling around, eating algae with that little radula tongue, basically licking the slimy stuff off the rocks. If you've been out in a tide pool, you know the rocks are real slippery and slimy. Most of the time, that's photosynthetic algae. Either as a multi-celled thing or a little single-celled protist just kind of covering it, making it just kind of slime. And many things feed on that as well, and these guys are one of them. So this is the Sitka Periwinkle, and its scientific name is Littorina sitkana. So Littorina sitkana. And one of the distinguishing features of this are the ridges in the shell. You can see it's got indentations and then ridges that run around it as well. The color can vary. They can be black to green to brown, and it does depend on the local substrate. So whatever color the rocks are in that particular area where they're occurring, they don't change to fit the rocks, right? Again, evolution by natural selection. There's a whole bunch of them, and the ones that don't blend in are the ones that get eaten. So natural selection drives that population to have that adaptation over time. These occur in a huge area as well, all the way from Japan, all the way up across, this is Russia, Siberia. This is the Kamchatka Peninsula here. And then we start with the Aleutian Island chain here, running all the way across and then down through California. A lot of our organisms have this kind of a range throughout. They span all the way across here. And the main reason for that is the ocean currents. And I thought I'd just bring this up. The Pacific Northwest region, a lot of our species cross over to Japan. In many cases, there's a different species or variety, right? It's just divergent evolution has caused them to be genetically different. But they genetically mix a lot because many of these organisms have a meroplankton stage, where in the larval stage they're plankton, and the ocean currents push things this way across. So we got the big, huge kind of conveyor circling down in here, right? We got the trade winds pushing things across, so the equatorial current, and then it rises up and then drops down from us, giving us cold, rich water. Now, this is the main current in the summertime. In the wintertime, with the tilt of the Earth, actually, this current kind of drops down further south for us. And what comes in on top of us is this Alaskan low-pressure system that drops down. But instead of bringing things this way, the Alaska low pressure system, right, is rotating the opposite direction up here. And so we get a southern southwest winds in the winter, bringing weather and rain up from the southwest. And then it also drags slightly warmer water and weather along our shoreline and moves things out this way. So seasonally, currents can rotate here, and that causes genetic mixing to go this way in the winter. And then in the summer, when the Earth tilts, the pressure systems, circulation systems move up north with that tilting, and then we get this big system. So we get cold water in the summer, keeping the ocean about 52 degrees here. It doesn't get very warm. And then in the winter, the opposite, right? Then we get a low pressure system, and we get relatively warmer water and warmer weather coming up from the south. The ocean's always about 50 degrees here. There's some variation to that, but pretty steady. We don't get a lot of snow, and that also causes this distribution of species back and forth. And the Aleutians really act as a great bridge for those as well. Moving on. The next two that we have are sea slugs. So now we're getting away from snails and we're getting into sea slugs. And there's a huge variety of sea slugs. In fact, more slugs occur in the ocean than do on land by far. Again, these things evolved in the ocean, life evolved in the ocean, and those that have come out on land are interesting, but not nearly as beautiful, I think, as the variety of slugs that you find in the ocean. So I'm just going to include two here, but we have a whole ton. It'd be great to get a guide and really take a look at the variety we have. The most common ones we have is the sea lemon, and its scientific name is Peltodoris nobilis. That's Peltodoris nobilis. It's the noble sea lemon, if I like to think of it. That helps me remember it. And Doris has a noble pelt, however you want to do it. It's the largest sea slug, okay? These things get 10 inches. They're like huge, okay? It's like a small Subway sandwich. And they feed on a variety of sponges. They really specialize in feeding on sponges, sea sponges and bryozoans and things like that. In the back, you see this little gill plume. These are actually gills where they breathe from. And then in the front, they have these little antennae, which are called rhinopores. And all sea slugs have these. You can see this on over here as well. And they use them to detect and smell chemicals, specifically smelling out food. And then they'll crawl towards it. There's a lot of them out there. I see these commonly snorkeling and scuba diving in the area. Netart's Bay has a ton of these. I haven't seen as many in Tillamook Bay, but I have seen a huge amount in Netart's Bay. They also lay these egg sacs, which are like these little spirals, and they cement them to rocks, and so you'll see those coming out. Again, a big variety in color variation depending on the substrate, where they live, and what it looks like. And there's just variety, right? There's variety in us, there's variety in life. That's how it works. Okay, the next up on the hit parade will be the clown nudibranch. So we have our sea slugs, and then the sea lemon belongs to a group. There's other peltodorids in our area besides nobilis as well. There's species in that group. Nudibranchs are a whole branch of sea slugs that are really elegant. They're soft, they're small, they're really brightly colored. They often have these little projections that come off of them that can be a huge variety of colors. One of the more common ones we have is this clown nudibranch, and they're smaller, 6-inch max, so I've seen them pretty big, but a lot of them I see are really tiny. And again, I see these commonly. I've seen them snorkeling in the bays around here quite often. Apparently their coloration is to warn fish that they could be poisonous. I don't know. I've never read anything that says they're actually toxic. I've just said that it's reported that they could be toxic. I don't know if you want to test this out. I wouldn't suggest it because, finding out that your hypothesis was correct could be fatal. Not a good one. Okay, scientific name on this one is Triopha catalinae. Triopha catalinae. And again, a big variety of these with those rhinopores. Here's a good photo that shows those. So these little antennae, you can see how they act like little just like little filters, and water comes rushing through these, and then they're able to pick up chemicals, right, in really small parts per millionth and sense. They have these little feelers that stick out in front that help them feel the environment as well. And then here's one laying an egg sac. And in aquariums, they do this real commonly on the glass. They like the smooth surface that it sticks to. And you can see, again, some color variation here. Here's a darker one, but the gill plume on the back as well. Triophacataline, clown nudibranch, and Peltodoris nobilis, the sea lemon. Okay, our last two this week. We have, of course, everybody's favorite, including myself, the giant Pacific octopus, otherwise known as the GPO. Okay, giant Pacific octopus. Let's just jump into the scientific name. It's a fun one. Scientific name for this one is Enteroctopus dofleini. Enteroctopus dofleini. That's how I say it. All right. It's the largest octopus in the world. Up to 156 pounds, right? So that's something that can put up a fight, and 24 feet across from arm tip to arm tip. 24 feet. It would basically fill my living room, and they're strong. Each arm has 2 rows of suckers going down it, and these suckers have rough edges and even little hooks on them. This is not an animal you want to tangle with. This is a full-blown predator. What's crazy about them is there's not a lot of bone structure to them. The one hard part they really have is this beak. And an octopus beak, if you flip them over and look at their mouth, it's like a bird beak. And again, it's chitinous. So it's made of this protein, similar to what the radula is made of. But this beak can cut and break and tear and inflict a really painful bite. Right? Here's a small one with its little beak. But you imagine a big 156-pounder wrapping up and then this laying into you. Kind of cool. Okay. Other cool things with an octopus is, their salivary glands are paralytic. Okay, and they have digestive toxins in their saliva. Well, so do we. Ours isn't paralytic. So they feed on a variety of things, and you can kind of see that shrimp crab's obvious. They can change color. So here's a really cool YouTube video.
If you're an octopus or a cephalopod, you need to really understand how to use your surroundings to hide. I'm going
to close this audio and just open up the video so you can watch real quick. So watch this in slow motion. Okay, you think you're looking at a piece of coral, and you are, but you're also looking at an octopus, baby. What? And then watch it shoot away, and it blasts you with ink as well. Pretty amazing. Now, I think it spreads itself out. It's trying to look big and threatening. It's an open area. There's nowhere to hide. So now it's going to tell you, hey, I'm big. I'm sassy. Let's watch this in reverse now. So they have the ability to change color and texture. Pretty amazing. Let's just go. Kabam. Okay. I have actually seen this. The first time I saw this, I didn't know that they could do this, and I was snorkeling with some friends. I was in Indonesia. I dove down and was looking at one, and then all of a sudden it did this. It jumped around and changed colors in me, and I lost my mind. And I thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And it is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Computer's being glitchy. They can lay up to 400,000 eggs. Once they lay the eggs, the females will often guard them right up until the end, even to their own death. So they actually don't live very long. For their size, they attain their size quickly. And then when they breed, they lay a ton of eggs, and then they guard them. Obviously, you're not going to produce 400,000, viable young, but they have a planktonic stage, and then they go on to make more. Okay, last one on the list today is the opalescent squid. And I love the sound of this name. It's Loligo opalescens. Pretty sounding. Loligo opalescens. They're small squid, 11 inches, so just under a foot, which is still sizable. Some squid get really big. A lot of them are smaller than that. These squid, they have 8 arms, and then they have 2 longer tentacles out to the side that help them feed. They live a very short life. I think this 6 to 9 months might just be the adult cycle for the larger size. The meroplankton stage, I'm not sure how long that is because they do have a planktonic stage as well. They occur all across the ocean, but again, generally near shore where there's food. But when they go to lay eggs, they come into really shallow. So they come near shore in large numbers. They're only like 10 to 50 meters deep, so 30 to 150 feet deep. They like their eggs to be in that nutrient-rich, light-rich water so that when they hatch, they have food right away, plankton. And they are cannibalistic. Apparently, they'll eat each other, but they also feed on many small fish and crabs and shrimp and things like that. They are a little predator, and they're a hugely important food supply for all kinds of other marine organisms: salmon, sharks, marine mammals, birds, humans. Squid are the little snack cracker of the ocean. Really, everything feeds and eats on them. They're not super calorie rich, but they're something to eat, right? So kind of like a chicken and a biscuit, except it's a squidness in a biscuit. And squid also have the ability to change color and blend in. They can be clear. Here's a picture of a bunch of little eggs that look like they're about to hatch, ready to develop. So when they come in to lay eggs, a lot of other organisms base their cycles around that. Oh, here's a cool diagram with the two longer tentacles sticking out that you can see that they use to sneak out and grab things. Okay, that's it for my species list. So study these up and have a good one. Peace. Honey!